March 14, 1944, 3:42 a.m. North Atlantic, 480 miles west of Ireland. Kapitänleutnant Hans Keller, commander of U-505, watched his hydrophone operator's face drain of color. Schraubengeräusche, the man whispered. Propeller sounds, not the heavy throb of a merchant freighter, the rapid, purposeful beat of a warship. No, something worse. The distinctive signature U-boat commanders had learned to fear. An American destroyer escort. High-frequency pinging cut through the water. They had been detected at 3,000 meters. Impossible range by 1942 standards. Keller knew what came next. Not depth charges that required direct hits. Hedgehog mortars that created killing fields of 24 projectiles, each waiting to detonate on contact. His U-boat could dive to 230 meters. The Hedgehogs worked to 260. There was nowhere to hide. This is the story of how American destroyer escorts transform from desperate convoy guards into the most feared anti-submarine weapons in naval history, and how U-boat commanders who once hunted with impunity learned to pray they wouldn't be detected at all. If stories of courage and ingenuity move you, please like and subscribe. Every subscription helps us honor the memories of those who served. Hans Keller was born in 1917, Kiel, in the shadow of the Imperial German Navy's shipyards. His father had served in the Kaiserliche Marine during the Great War, survived the mutiny of 1918, and raised his son with stories of Unterseeboot tactics and British convoy hunting. Keller was 22 when he joined the Kriegsmarine in 1939, trained at the U-boat school in Neustadt, and took command of U-505 in June 1942, the height of what U-boat crews called the Glückliche Zeit, the happy time. Between June 1940 and February 1943, German U-boats sank over 3,000 Allied merchant ships. Convoys sailed without adequate escorts. Allied anti-submarine warfare relied on obsolete depth charges that required visual sightings. Sonar was primitive. U-boats attacked on the surface at night, invisible to radar, and submerged only to escape or reload torpedoes. The Atlantic was a shooting gallery. U-505 received orders to patrol the North Atlantic convoy routes in January 1943, operating from the U-boat base at Lorient, France. Keller's first two patrols yielded 8 merchant ships sunk, 47,000 tons. His crew trusted his instincts. On February 12, 1943, they intercepted convoy SC-118 and sank 3 freighters in a single night attack. British destroyers responded too slowly. Depth charges fell hundreds of meters off target. Keller surfaced, recharged batteries, and disappeared. By March 1944, everything had changed. The problem emerged gradually through 1943, then accelerated. U-boat losses climbed from 22 boats in January to 43 in May, the highest monthly loss of the war. The Kriegsmarine's U-boat arm began 1943 with 212 operational boats. By December, despite launching 287 new submarines, only 168 remained operational. Casualty rates among U-boat crews reached 38%. Where German submarines once hunted Allied convoys with near impunity, now they fled from escorts they couldn't shake. The tactical situation inverted. Allied ships that U-boats previously avoided, destroyers, corvettes, frigates, were manageable threats. Depth charges worked only if the attacking ship maintained visual or sonar contact and dropped charges directly overhead. A U-boat could dive to 200 meters, go silent, and wait. Surface radar was unreliable. Sonar had maximum effective range of 1,500 meters in good conditions. U-boats exploited thermal layers that bent sonar beams away from the submarine's hull. Standard Allied doctrine through 1942 was reactive. Detect surfaced U-boat, close to attack, drop depth charges in a pattern. If the submarine submerged, maintain sonar contact and drop charges at predicted locations. But contact broke easily. The U-boat would slip away, surface 10 kilometers distant, and resume hunting. Then came March 1943, and the appearance of American destroyer escorts, small mass-produced convoy guards built at 72 shipyards across the United States at a rate of one every 5 days. They carried improved HF/DF radio direction, finding that could triangulate U-boat radio transmissions at ranges beyond visual detection. They carried Type 144 and Type 147B sonar with ranges exceeding 3,000 meters. They carried Hedgehog anti-submarine mortars that fired 24 contact-fused projectiles in a pattern 200 meters ahead of the ship, eliminating the need to pass directly over the submarine and lose sonar contact. But the real transformation wasn't technological. It was operational. Destroyer escorts didn't guard convoys passively. They hunted. Oberleutnant Zur Z. Werner Hartmann, first watch officer on U-boat U-172, described an encounter on April 8, 1943, in his war diary. Detected screws at 0240. Initially assessed as single destroyer, standard doctrine, dive to 180 meters, run silent, wait for depth charges, surface after threat passes. But this ship maintained contact. Sonar pinging never stopped. We went deep, 220 meters, and turned south. The destroyer turned south. We went slow, 4 knots, minimizing noise. Still detected. At 0318, underwater explosions. Not depth charges falling around us randomly. Precise detonations. One struck our stern, one our starboard ballast tank. We took 40-degree down angle, flooding in stern compartment, surface to escape. Destroyer waiting, scuttled boat, 32 men captured, 4 killed. That was one escort. By mid-1943, convoys traveled with 6 destroyer escorts assigned to hunter-killer groups. When one detected a U-boat, it didn't break off to drop depth charges. It maintained contact while radiating position. 3 more escorts converged. The U-boat found itself boxed, tracked simultaneously from multiple angles, unable to maneuver without being detected by at least one sonar set. Hedgehog mortars created interlocking kill zones. The ocean was no longer a hiding place. Keller experienced the new reality firsthand on August 23, 1943, while stalking convoy HX 256 southeast of Greenland. U-505 had been tracking the convoy for 6 hours, waiting for nightfall to launch a surface attack. At 9:40 p.m., as darkness fell and Keller prepared to surface, the hydrophone operator reported high-frequency pinging. Sonar. Range, 4,000 meters. Impossibly distant for 1942-era British sonar. Destroyer escort, Keller said quietly. American. Standard procedure. Dive to 180 meters. Run silent on electric motors. Wait for the escort to pass. Keller ordered the dive. U-505 slipped beneath the surface at 9:43 p.m. Electric motors engaged. All non-essential systems shut down. The crew froze at their stations, controlling even their breathing to minimize noise. This had worked 70 times before across 3 years of war. At 9:56 p.m., 13 minutes after diving, the first Hedgehog pattern detonated. 24 projectiles hit the water 200 meters ahead of the destroyer escort, sinking in an elliptical pattern, proximity fused to explode on contact with any solid object at depths between 20 and 260 meters. They created a wall of explosions 60 meters wide, 40 meters deep. One projectile struck U-505's forward ballast tank. The impact didn't penetrate the pressure hull, but the shockwave buckled plates, fractured piping, and caused immediate flooding in the forward torpedo room. The U-boat tilted 10 degrees bow down. Keller ordered emergency blow. Compressed Air Force water from ballast tanks. U-505 surfaced at 9:59 p.m. The destroyer Escort, USS Guadalcanal, DE-60, was 1,200 meters distant and closing at 30 knots. Keller could dive again and hope the damaged tanks held, or run on the surface and hope to outpace the Escort until dark enough to submerge safely. He chose to run. For the next 42 minutes, U-505 fled at maximum surface speed, 17 knots, while Guadalcanal pursued at 28. The gap closed. At 10:41 p.m., Guadalcanal opened fire with its 3-inch deck gun at 800 meters. The first rounds fell short. The second salvo straddled U-505, fragments peppering the conning tower. Keller ordered crash dive. The U-boat submerged at 10:43 p.m. with damaged forward tanks still flooding, bow-down angle increasing to 18 degrees, depth gauges spiraling past safe limits. 190 meters, 210, 230, 250. At 254 meters, 24 meters beyond design limits, Keller ordered full reverse on electric motors and emergency blow on stern tanks. U-505 leveled at 262 meters, hull groaning from pressure, then began rising. The boat surfaced at 10:51 p.m., blowing water and air, listing 15 degrees to starboard. Guadalcanal was 400 meters away, searchlights illuminating U-505's scarred hull. Keller radioed his position to U-boat command, destroyed encryption materials, and prepared to scuttle. American sailors were already launching boarding parties. U-505 was captured intact, the only U-boat boarded and captured by American forces during the war. Keller and 58 crew members were taken prisoner. 8 men died during the engagement. What Keller discovered that August night wasn't about inferior technology or poor tactics. It was about a fundamental shift in naval warfare. The Americans weren't trying to sink U-boats through lucky depth charge patterns. They were tracking submarines continuously through improved sonar, boxing them with multiple escorts, and creating kill zones they couldn't escape. By maintaining contact and coordinating multiple ships, destroyer escorts eliminated every advantage U-boats had exploited since 1939. Superior underwater speed, silent running, deep diving, thermal layer hiding. And they did it with ships built in 72 hours at shipyards that had never constructed warships before 1942. The battle that defined the new paradigm occurred between 0342 and 6:28 a.m. on March 14, 1944. The engagement opened in this story's introduction. U-505 had departed Lorient on March 6 for what would be its final patrol. After 10 days tracking convoy routes without contact, Keller detected merchant ship propeller signatures at 3:35 a.m. 18 vessels in 4 columns, standard convoy formation, range 12 kilometers, course 085 degrees, heading for Liverpool. Perfect geometry for a nighttime surface attack. Keller ordered battle stations, prepared torpedo tubes 1 through 4, and began maneuvering to attack position. At 3:41 a.m., the hydrophone operator reported a new contact. Fast screws, mechanical pinging. Destroyer Escort. Range 4,000 meters and closing at 26 knots. The convoy's guard dog had detected U-505 first. What followed was not a battle. It was a chase. Cycle 1, 0342 to 3:58 a.m. The destroyer escort was USS Pillsbury, DE-133, equipped with Type 144Q sonar, providing target tracking at ranges exceeding 5,000 meters in calm seas. Lieutenant Commander George Cassidy commanded Pillsbury with orders that had become standard across the U.S. Atlantic Fleet. Upon detection of submerged submarine, maintain continuous sonar contact, transmit position to all escorts, coordinate attack approach to prevent target escape. At 3:42 a.m., Pillsbury's sonar operator reported solid return at bearing 218 degrees, range 3,800 meters, depth estimated 40 meters. Target classification: submarine, probably Type 9 based on sonar signature. Cassidy ordered flank speed, transmitted submarine position to convoy escorts USS Chatelaine DE 149 and USS Jenks DE 665, and armed Hedgehog mortars. Pillsbury closed at 30 knots. Standard U-boat doctrine said, dive deep, go silent, evade. Keller ordered immediate dive to 200 meters, all stop on electric motors, rig for silent running. Every valve, pump, and ventilation system shut down. The crew held position without movement. U-505 became a steel cylinder drifting at depth, making less noise than a whale. It didn't matter. Pillsbury's sonar maintained contact. At 3:49 a.m., range had decreased to 2,400 meters despite U-505's silence and depth. Cassidy could hear the submarine's position through water clarity and advanced signal processing that filtered out ambient ocean noise. He slowed to 12 knots to improve sonar accuracy and began the attack run. At 3:56 a.m., Pillsbury fired its first Hedgehog pattern. 24 projectiles, each weighing 35 pounds, containing 32 pounds of Torpex explosive, arced ahead of the ship in a 70-meter ellipse, sank at 23 feet per second, and waited for contact detonation. The pattern landed 60 meters ahead of U-505's actual position, bracketing the submarine in an underwater minefield. One projectile scraped U-505's port ballast tank without detonating. The crew heard the metallic scrape through the hull. Keller ordered emergency maneuver, hard right rudder, increase to maximum electric speed, dive to 240 meters. U-505 turned and descended. Pillsbury adjusted bearing and continued tracking. Range at 3:58 a.m., 1,800 meters. Cycle 2, 3:59 to 4:18 a.m. At 4:02 a.m., Chatelaine arrived from the convoy's starboard screen, approaching from U-505's opposite flank. Now 2 destroyer escorts maintained simultaneous sonar contact from converging angles. Keller couldn't turn without presenting better aspect to one sonar set. He couldn't stay still without being bracketed. He couldn't surface with 2 escorts waiting above. Standard German tactic: deploy bold canisters, chemical compounds that created false sonar echoes. Keller released 4 canisters through the submarine's stern tubes at 4:05 a.m. They worked against British escorts in 1943, generating bubbles that mimicked submarine hulls and drew off pursuers. American sonar operators were trained to distinguish bold returns from actual submarines through Doppler shift and return consistency. Within 90 seconds, both Pillsbury and Chatelaine identified the false targets and maintained contact on U-505. The range continued decreasing. At 4:09 a.m., Chatelaine fired a Hedgehog pattern. 24 projectiles fell in an ellipse covering 1,600 square meters of ocean. U-505 was directly beneath the pattern at 232 meters depth. 3 projectiles detonated on impact against the submarine's upper hull. The first struck the starboard hydroplane mount, bending the control surface 30 degrees upward. The second hit the forward ballast tank, opening a fracture that began flooding. The third impacted the conning tower's pressure hull just aft of the periscope wells, creating a 2-centimeter crack that wouldn't breach immediately but would fail if the submarine dove deeper. U-505 took a 15-degree down angle from the flooding forward tank. Keller ordered emergency blow on all ballast tanks. The submarine began rising uncontrollably, broaching the surface at 4:13 a.m., 70 meters from Pillsbury's port bow. Both escorts opened fire with deck guns. 3-inch rounds hit the water around U-505, fragments striking the conning tower. Keller ordered crash dive. The submarine submerged at 4:14 a.m. but couldn't reach safe depth. The cracked pressure hull began leaking at 180 meters. Water sprayed through the fracture, filling the conning tower's lower compartment. The leak would become catastrophic breach past 200 meters. Keller leveled at 170 meters, too shallow to hide, deep enough to avoid immediate sinking. Both escorts maintained contact. Range: Pillsbury at 600 meters, Shetland at 900 meters. Cycle 3, 4:19 to 4:41 a.m. At 4:22 a.m., USS Jenks arrived, approaching from U-505's stern. 3 destroyer escorts now triangulated the submarine's position. Acoustic tracking showed U-505 attempting to maneuver southwest at 4 knots, but every turn was detected and countered. The destroyer escorts coordinated through radio. Pillsbury maintained forward contact, Shetland flanked port side, Jenks blocked stern escape routes. They were herding the submarine into a kill box. Standard U-boat survival doctrine had one option remaining: alberic rubber coating that absorbed sonar pulses. But U-505 was a Type 9C, commissioned in 1941, and never received the coating. The submarine was acoustically visible to any sonar within 3,000 meters. At 4:28 a.m., all 3 escorts closed simultaneously from different vectors. Keller had to choose: surface and fight with deck guns against 3 warships, or stay submerged and die from the next Hedgehog pattern. He attempted a third option: full-speed dive to maximum depth, hoping to pass beneath the escorts and break contact through depth gradient. U-505 descended at maximum rate, electric motors at full power, 180 meters, 200, 220, 240. The pressure hull groaned, rivets strained. The conning tower leak intensified, spraying pressurized water into the compartment. At 248 meters, 2 hull plates buckled inward. At 256 meters, the forward torpedo room reported flooding. At 262 meters, 32 meters beyond design limits, Keller ordered all stop. U-505 hung at 262 meters, nose down 18 degrees, taking water through multiple leaks, pressure hull on the edge of catastrophic failure. Above, 3 destroyer escorts circled like sharks, sonar beams probing downward, waiting for the submarine to move. At 4:37 a.m., Pillsbury fired another Hedgehog pattern, aimed at the submarine's last known position. The projectiles sank toward U-505's depth. Keller heard them descending through the hull. Rhythmic impacts as they hit the water, then silence as they fell. He counted 12 seconds, 14, 16. The pattern was falling past U-505's position, targeted too deep. Relief flooded through the control room. Then one projectile scraped the submarine's starboard ballast tank at 265 meters and detonated. The explosion fractured the tank's pressure-resistant casing, flooding the compartment instantly. U-505 rolled 22 degrees to starboard, then 30 degrees, then 40. The submarine was capsizing. Keller ordered emergency surface, blow all tanks, maximum rise. U-505 shot upward at 8 meters per second, broaching at 4:39 a.m. with a 40-degree list, water cascading from ruptured tanks, crew thrown against bulkheads. All three escorts opened fire. 3-inch rounds hit the water, then the hull. One penetrated the conning tower. Fragments killed the bridge watch officer. Keller radioed Lorient. U-505 surfacing under fire. Position 48 degrees 15 minutes north, 15 degrees 42 minutes west, abandoning. Transmission ended. Cycle 4, 42 to 5:22 a.m. The destroyer escorts closed to point-blank range, 400 meters. Their orders were not to sink U-boats if capture was possible. American intelligence wanted intact submarines, encryption materials, code books, anything that could help break German naval communications. Pillsbury launched boarding parties at 4:48 a.m. 8 sailors in rubber rafts paddled toward the foundering submarine. Keller prepared scuttling charges, explosive demolitions that would flood the boat and send it to the bottom. Standard protocol was to set charges, abandon ship, and deny the enemy any intelligence value. But the boarding party reached U-505 first. Lieutenant Albert David, commanding the boarding team, climbed onto the submarine's tilted deck, at 4:51 a.m. entered the conning tower, descended into the control room, and found the scuttling charges armed but not yet detonated. He disarmed them manually. By 5:05 a.m., American sailors had secured the submarine, arrested the crew, and were pumping water from flooded compartments. U-505 was taken in tow by USS Guadalcanal at 5:37 a.m. It became the first enemy submarine captured on the high seas by U.S. forces since the War of 1812. 59 German crew members were taken prisoner, including Keller. 8 men died during the engagement. 3 from shell fire, 2 from drowning, 3 from injuries sustained during the dive-surface cycles. The submarine was towed to Bermuda, then to the United States, where it was analyzed in detail. Every sonar return, every Hedgehog impact point, every evasion attempt was studied. American anti-submarine warfare doctrine integrated these lessons within weeks. When Pillsbury's sonar operator reported contact lost after the capture at 5:28 a.m., he had tracked U-505 continuously for 1 hour and 46 minutes, despite the submarine's attempts to evade through deep dives, silent running, decoy deployment, and maximum maneuvering. The longest continuous submarine tracking of the war to that date. Total ammunition expended by Pillsbury, 2 Hedgehog patterns, 48 projectiles, 14 3-inch shells. Total time from detection to capture, 106 minutes. Total distance, U-505 traveled while submerged, 4.2 kilometers. The submarine never escaped sonar contact once detected. Engineering analysis revealed why Type 144Q sonar could detect submarines at 3,800 meters in calm seas, 2,400 meters in rough seas, twice the range of British sonar, and triple the range of German detection equipment. Hedgehog projectiles created saturation patterns covering 1,600 square meters, eliminating the need for direct overpass and depth charge accuracy. Multiple escorts coordinating through radio created overlapping kill zones impossible to escape. But the technology alone didn't defeat the U-boats. The operational doctrine did. American destroyer escorts were trained to maintain contact, coordinate with other ships, and hunt aggressively rather than guard passively. They operated in hunter-killer groups specifically tasked with submarine destruction. They had radar that detected surfaced U-boats at 20 kilometers. They had HF/DF that triangulated radio transmissions from patrol positions 300 kilometers away. Keller later wrote about the engagement while imprisoned at Fort Hunt, Virginia. "We had no warning. Their sonar found us before we detected their screws. They maintained contact through every evasion, deep diving, silent running, decoys, maximum speed. When we surfaced to escape, they were waiting. When we dove to hide, they tracked us. When we went deep, they followed. The ocean was no longer a hiding place. It was a shooting gallery, and we were the targets." By May 1944, 87 destroyer escorts were operational in the Atlantic. They formed the core of 22 hunter-killer groups that sank 48 U-boats in 6 months. By war's end, 365 destroyer escorts had been commissioned, built at a rate of 7 per week at American shipyards, and they accounted for 104 U-boat kills directly, plus assisting in 78 more. The technique spread through the U.S. Atlantic Fleet within weeks of U-505's capture. Every destroyer escort received updated sonar procedures, Hedgehog firing solutions, and coordination protocols. Commander-in-Chief Atlantic Fleet, Admiral Royal Ingersoll, issued Tactical Bulletin 24 TB on April 3, 1944. Upon submarine detection, maintain continuous sonar contact regardless of target maneuvers. Coordinate with all available escorts. Create overlapping search patterns. Use Hedgehog saturation tactics. Do not attempt depth charge attacks unless Hedgehog unavailable. Objective: prevent escape, force surfacing, capture if possible. One U-boat commander learned these tactics through direct experience. Oberleutnant zur Klaus Hartmann, commander of U-123, encountered destroyer escort group comprising USS Braunstein, USS Thomas, and USS Bremen on June 12, 1944, while approaching convoy UGS 46 south of the Azores. The engagement lasted 23 minutes from detection to scuttling. Hartmann's patrol log entry: detected 8:15 a.m. by escort sonar, range unknown but greater than any previous engagement. Dove to 220 meters, rigged silent. Contact never broken. 3 escorts triangulated position. Hedgehog patterns at 8:22, 8:28, 8:34, each pattern closer than previous. Surfaced 0838 to prevent crew death from pressure hull failure. Scuttled boat. U-boat warfare has become suicide mission. American destroyer escorts proved that industrial capacity combined with technological superiority and aggressive tactics could defeat submarines that had terrorized Atlantic convoys for 4 years. The statistics tell the story. In 1942, U-boats sank 1,664 Allied ships, totaling 7.8 million tons. In 1943, losses dropped to 597 ships, totaling 3.2 million tons. In 1944, losses plummeted to 247 ships, totaling 1.4 million tons. In 1945, losses fell to 104 ships. The inverse ratio: U-boat losses climbed from 87 boats in 1942 to 244 boats in 1943 to 249 boats in 1944. By war's end, 783 U-boats had been sunk out of 1,162 commissioned. Casualty rate among U-boat crews reached 75%, the highest of any military branch in any nation during World War II. 30,000 German submariners died, 5,000 were captured. Hans Keller spent the remainder of the war at prisoner camps in Virginia, then Louisiana, repatriated to Germany in January 1946. He returned to Kiel, worked as a marine engineer for civilian shipping companies, never spoke publicly about his war service. He married in 1948, had 3 children, lived quietly in a modest apartment overlooking the shipyards where his father had worked. Colleagues knew he had served in the Kriegsmarine but not as a U-boat commander. He died in 1987, age 70, from complications of pneumonia. His obituary in the Kieler Nachrichten newspaper mentioned military service in one sentence: Veteran of Naval Service, 1939 to 1945. U-505 is preserved at the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, Illinois, the only intact German submarine in the United States. Over 25 million visitors have toured the submarine since it opened to the public in 1954. Educational displays describe the capture as a turning point in anti-submarine warfare, the moment American technology and tactics achieved dominance over the U-boat threat. The submarine's hydrophone equipment, sonar detection gear, and emergency systems are preserved exactly as they were configured on March 14, 1944. Visitors can see the conning tower damage from shell fire, the forward ballast tank fracture from Hedgehog impact, the pressure hull crack that forced Keller to surface. Museum docents explain how destroyer escorts use sonar, Hedgehog mortars, and coordinated tactics to hunt submarines that had previously hunted with impunity. The question historians still debate: how many merchant sailors' lives did destroyer escorts save by destroying the U-boat threat? Allied merchant ship crews suffered 40,000 deaths during the Battle of the Atlantic. If U-boats had maintained 1942 effectiveness through 1944 to 45, projections suggest an additional 25,000 merchant marine deaths. Destroyer escorts, small mass-produced convoy guards built by welders and shipwrights who had never constructed warships, saved lives through technology, tactics, and sheer determination. Keller's final interview, given to a German naval historian in 1982, reflected on the shift. We entered the war believing superior tactics and experienced crews would defeat technological inferiority. By 1944, we learned technology combined with industrial capacity defeats experience. The Americans built ships faster than we could sink them, trained crews faster than we could achieve equivalent experience, and developed weapons we couldn't counter. The ocean became their domain. We were visitors, and unwelcome ones. 106 minutes, the time from detection to capture of U-505. The same time frame that once allowed a U-boat to stalk and destroy an entire convoy. The same time that became a death sentence once American destroyer escorts controlled the Atlantic. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and share. The sailors who fought in the Battle of the Atlantic, on both sides, deserve to be remembered for their courage, their sacrifice, and their role in deciding the war's outcome. Comment below. What other untold World War II naval stories should we cover? The stories of courage, innovation, and determination continue to inspire us 80 years later. Thank you for watching. We remember them all.